It's family time.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Family Time. Family Time is live on YouTube, on the Love 101 Facebook and YouTube live channels. Now, Family Time, as you know, is about your issues, about your relationships. We are your at-home family, your community family. We're your global family. Family Time is produced by Family Life Ministries, and our aim is to enable healthy families, which will lead to a healthy nation. So stay tuned. Join us on all platforms, Facebook and YouTube, which are live, and you are in for a very lively, engaging discussion, informative discussion today on dementia and the caregiver. Do you help your elderly loved one get dressed, use the bathroom, go shopping, or do other chores? Do you ensure that they're exercising, eating a balanced meal, and taking medication in a timely manner? Do you provide a listening ear and show care and support? Then you are probably their caregiver. And that's basically a full time job. You're probably wondering if you're doing the job effectively, safely, and well. Today, we want to help to guide you along the way. Our feedback question today is, what is your biggest challenge as the caregiver of someone with dementia? Send your responses via WhatsApp text and voice notes. Make sure they're not longer than 30 seconds to 876-997-3125, or call the studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 968-8328 to participate. You can also watch us and comment live on the Love 101 Facebook and YouTube channels. We'll be right back with our special guest who knows just about everything to do with dementia, Dr. Ishtar Gofia. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, where are the campus heights? Students are strap up in a price.
Don't miss Campus Connection as our youth join in prayer in praying times on Tuesday, February 7, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. on Love 101. We're inviting all youth and youth serving organizations to stand with us as we intercede and pray for salvation and the transformation of our nation's youth and more. We will have persons equipped to break down principles of effective prayer. Also, you don't want to miss I Chose Christ, You Should Too, and lots more right here on Campus Connection, 5:30 p.m. on February 7, 2023 on Love 101, the family station.
It's all about the gospel. So tell me what one bump campus. Youths are going on bump campus.
Yay! Get ready for an inspiring time inside Love in the Morning with me, your host, Jakal Dyer. This Tuesday, February 7th at 5:45 a.m., we give love shout-outs to some creatives and businesses that are leaving footprints in their respective fields. Grab your cup of coffee and start the day right with Morning Coffee Pick-Me-Up Devotional at 6 a.m. Then at 7 a.m., we bring you The Morning Watch with intriguing and thought-provoking discussions. 8:30 a.m. inside The Healthy Way, we discuss acne. Do you know where Dr. Cicely Delphine Williams hailed from? No? Well, stick around as we share more details on our Person of the Week. 9:35 a.m., the phone lines are open for A Voice for Hope, a time for listeners to call and share challenges faced and the help needed regarding light, water, and more in your community. Stick and stay with us this Island Vibes Tuesday inside Love in the Morning, 5 to 10 a.m. on the family station, Love 101.
But that just get shaped up. So if I bought it.
Well, on Love 101, and welcome to Dr. Ishtar Govil, our special guest this evening. How are you?
I'm doing well, Tamai. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to have you. Now, Dr. Govia is
Govaya, Tamaya.
Govia, my apologies.
No
Dr.
worries.
Govia is a dementia care management consultant and clinical psychologist. She assists persons living with dementia and their care network with care management and coordination. She is the lead for the multi-country dementia care improvement study called Strengthening Responses to Dementia, STRIDE, Jamaica. Now remember that we want to hear from you. What is your biggest challenge as the caregiver of someone with dementia? We want to hear from you. You can WhatsApp your text and voice notes not longer than 30 seconds to 876-997-3125. Watch us and comment live on the Love 101 Facebook and YouTube channels. You can also call the studio lines at 876-968-8327 and 968-8328 to participate. Time really flies on this program, so we are going to jump right in. Now, Dr. Govaya, can you give us a quick reminder of what dementia is?
Sure. Dementia is an umbrella term that's used to describe changes to the structure and the function of the brain. And those changes really affect person's ability to think clearly, to remember details, to plan effectively. And there are a number of what we call pathways that can lead to these changes. And the main pathway that we've heard about pretty regularly is Alzheimer's disease. So this is one pathway to
Okay,
some of these changes that can happen in the brain.
okay, okay. Now, who is or becomes the caregiver and what do they do?
Any of us can become a caregiver because the truth is we're often undertaking responsibilities related to caregiving even before we are aware that we're doing that. So many of us are sons, daughters, wives, mothers, sisters, brothers. In all of these roles, you might actually be performing caregiving responsibilities. And those responsibilities can be things that seem simple, such as companionship, and they may be even more complex, such as supervision with medication, helping to keep somebody safe if they're at a
Right.
point where they're not clear about how a specific behavior can put them or can put others at risk as well.
Okay, okay. Now, what are some of the responsibilities that is involved in caregiving?
A broad spectrum of responsibilities. So a caregiver can be considered an administrator, a social worker, a home helper, a planner, a key decision maker, a financial manager. So a caregiver can be doing all of these different types of things. And particularly as family members, we often undertake multiple realms of responsibilities. And it really depends on the progression of the dementia in the person that we're caring for.
Okay,
And it depends as well on that person's individual risk factors and how that disease process is manifesting for that person.
okay. Do different pathways have different risk factors?
Yes, it's a really good question. So, with Alzheimer's disease, the biggest risk factor is age. So,
Okay,
the older you get, the more at risk you are of developing Alzheimer's disease, for
okay,
example. It's not inevitable. It's just that age is highly correlated with Alzheimer's disease. So, what you will see, for example, is that persons who are 80 and older are much more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease
okay,
than somebody who is in their 60s, etc.
okay,
Vascular dementia, which is a different type of dementia, that tends to happen to persons who have what we call vascular related risk factors. So somebody who has risk factors related to their blood pressure, to
okay,
their cholesterol, somebody who has had strokes. These are persons who are particularly at risk. There's
okay,
another type of dementia that's called frontotemporal dementia, and that one has a much stronger genetic propensity. And so, persons who have genes, they're carrying genes from one side of their family or another side that has that particular variant, those individuals are more at risk. But there
okay,
are many, many different types of dementia. So your risk and the types of risk factors that somebody might have would vary depending upon the particular type of dementia that might be presenting. And you might
Okay.
have more than one presenting in one individual.
Right, right. And then so each of those different types of dementia and the associated risks would demand different things from each caregiver.
Exactly, exactly. And
Okay.
depending upon the individual's other risk factors. So, for example, some persons don't know that hearing loss is a major risk factor for cognitive impairment. And if you're not attending to something like hearing loss, for example, if you feel a little self conscious about wearing a hearing aid or you don't want to go and get your hearing checked, what you
Right.
may not realize is that you're becoming even more susceptible to developing cognitive impairment as you get older, and as other types of what we call comorbidities, which are these coexisting illnesses and risk factors as they develop. And so some person who is not able to hear well might be differently at risk than somebody who has high blood pressure, who
Right.
might have had a stroke but might still be able to hear well. And so it's the unique combination of factors that each person has that will put them at particular risk.
Okay. Okay. Now, I know we're asking our listeners to share the challenges that they have in their caregiving roles, but what are the typical challenges that we will see in a caregiver of someone with dementia?
Overwhelm, a lot of stress and overwhelm from particularly at some of the earlier phases and stages of a dementia progression. The person who's experiencing those changes may not have a level of self awareness or what we call insight that these changes are happening in them. Or they might realize that these changes are happening in them and it may really scare them, it might terrify them. And so their mood starts to fluctuate. They may go into deep depression or experience extreme swings of anxiety and panic. Their behavior might change. They might seem to get suspicious and not trusting. And so, as a caregiver who is on the receiving end of some of these things and is really just trying to figure out how can I be most helpful to this person, they're
Right.
sometimes feeling spurned, they're feeling criticized, they're feeling as though I'm trying to help here, but this person who I'm trying to help doesn't even realize that they might need help. And so
Right.
that sense of overwhelm, that sense of confusion about what do I do if I see that this person needs help, for example, that they're wanting to give away all of their money to a relative stranger, or
Right.
they might be taking medication twice that they're really not supposed to take more than once. Um,
Right.
that caregiver might be feeling really confused, him or herself, about what to do, and then without recognizing that the person may not be able to respond um, with a certain level of insight or with a certain level of understanding of what he or she is going through. They might have expectations of that person that they might just, if they just tell them, look, you're not understanding what I'm saying,
Right.
that they'll be able to change their behavior. And so being confronted with the reality that the person is not changing their behavior also can induce a certain level of deep sadness, seeing
Right.
these changes in a loved one, in somebody that you care about, somebody whose care you are involved in, somebody who
Right.
you've known to be functioning in a really particular way. Um, really, it can really bring on a deep sense of sadness and grief.
Right.
And some caregivers might also be experiencing a lot of denial themselves, that they don't want to hear about this because this is not really talked about. It's not talked about in
Right.
churches enough. It's not talked about in our communities enough. And so they might also have a resistance to talking about it. They might feel
Right.
embarrassed. So it's a broad spectrum, overwhelm, because these people who are involved in caring for these people that they love, they're also doing multiple other things. They're caring
Right.
for children, they're going to work. Some of them, they might be responsible for other things around the house, other
Right.
family members, other
And
things
so
in
there's
their
a lot
life.
of that a lack of social support because they're now consumed with so many responsibilities.
Yes, yes. And indeed, what tends to happen a lot is that we think that there are these times where we might expect that the church might come to our rescue and our service. But sometimes it's these times where we might want the church to come that we actually back away from the church.
Yeah.
We think that this is too private. This is not something to share. And in
Right.
fact, those are the times where we need the help. We need the respite, really, as
Yes.
caregivers.
Okay, okay. Now we're actually up on our break, but I just want to remind our listeners of our feedback question this evening. What is your biggest challenge as a caregiver of someone with dementia? We're looking forward to hearing your stories. We'll be right back after this short break.
Simplified customer due diligence is part of each financial institution's Know Your Customer process. As part of Simplified CDD, the information required includes a valid ID, tax registration number, and source of funds.
This financial literacy tip was brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, building an inclusive economy.
Imagine the love of your life being fashioned specifically for you. Imagine waking up with the perfect body, not having to wonder if this is the person you are made to be with, and living with them in the perfect garden. I wonder, what was living and working together 24/7 like? What was love life like for Adam and Eve? Tuesday, February 7 on The Rock, join host Bishop Hero Steve Blair and guests Homer and Angela Slack as they discuss the topic Adam and Eve, the first lovebirds. That's The Rock, Tuesday, February 7 at 10 a.m. right here on the family station, Love 101.
Okay, welcome back to Family Time on Love 101, and we are looking at dementia and the caregiver. Remember, we want to hear from you. What is your biggest challenge as the caregiver of someone with dementia? WhatsApp text and voice notes not longer than 30 seconds to 876-997-3125. Watch us and comment live on the Love 101 Facebook and YouTube channels. And you can also call the studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 968-8328 to participate. And I'm sure that Dr. Ishtar Govaya will be happy to respond to any of your queries. Now we have just one voice note, so I'm going to let them play that before we continue.
Good evening, counselor. My dearest challenge is when I have to talk loud to the person what I'm taking care of, and they cannot hear. And when I talk loud, they have to say I'm shouting at them. So that is my greatest challenge. And I have to ask them every time what is the meal, what they want. Because if I give them anything what they don't want to eat it.
Yeah, this is a fairly common type of challenge, and I think it may seem simple, but it can really raise a lot of frustrations in both the person who is living with dementia and in the person who is really trying to do their best to care for them. And in fact, the issues related to hearing may happen with persons who aren't even living with cognitive impairment. And
Right.
some of the key strategies that we talk about using in these situations is to ensure that you're not behind the person when you're speaking to them, but
Okay.
that you're in front of the person and that they can see you, particularly for persons who have challenges with hearing. It's important that they can see your face and that they can see your lips when you're
Okay.
talking. And so that they're not They're not, if you are saying something behind them and they can't hear you too well, they might just get more irritated and agitated if if they're hearing what sounds like static behind them. So it's
Right.
important, stand in front of them, see if you can be face to face and level to level, because otherwise you don't want to be talking down to them either.
Right.
You really want to be on the same level, and then try to speak as clearly as possible and ensure that they're seeing your lips move. Another
Right.
key strategy, particularly when you're offering options, is to ensure that you're actually able to show them what the options are. So for example,
Right.
you can hold the pack of porridge or the cornflakes and say, which of these would you like
Right.
today? And so that way they're seeing the possibilities and that they have a sense of what it is you're actually offering them. Those are two
Okay.
key concrete strategies.
Okay, those are very good tips, Dr. Govile. Now, I am curious, why did you go into this kind of research?
Well, actually, this is very personal for me. So, a number of years ago, my mother-in-law was showing signs of cognitive impairment, and she had a family history of dementia. And in that situation, it was clear to us that there were some signs that this was likely the progression. And at that point in time, we didn't feel a sense of clarity in terms of the resources that were available. We felt very overwhelmed and we felt a bit stuck in terms of where to go for help. And so the main impetus was her. She is my main motivation. She passed in 2020, but we continue the work because there are a number of persons who are really aware, they're going through this themselves, and they feel a sense of wanting community. They feel a sense of really wanting to know what resources there are, and they want to know that there are people who are invested in this. And I just want to assure everybody I am deeply invested in this, and I will continue to be, and I'm really just excited for more partners in the journey and more persons who are thinking about how can we build out this ecosystem of care. And we're doing that with some of the initiatives that we have going on. The Stride project was one of them. Now we have a caregiver training program that we're starting up. And if persons are interested, we'll share the telephone number and the email so that you can reach out to us if you are interested in getting that training as a caregiver. And we also have other initiatives like using technology to help facilitate things that are speedy and can really help with detection and facilitate diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And so the impetus was personal, and it's now become a professional passion of mine. Not
It
hearing
wasn't.
okay.
Sorry, thanks for sharing that. I know it wasn't on our, in our discussion that we would talk about that, but I appreciate you sharing. Now, we spoke about the responsibilities that the caregiver would have, and I wonder if this requires special skills, if it has to be taught, or it's a natural inclination, and if there are special skills, then why do they need them to be? Why the skills need to be specific or specified?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, Tamaya. And there are special skills because we're not socialized to expect that the core relationships that we have, our roles are going to switch in them. And with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, this is exactly what happens. So as the person with dementia, as their disease progress continues, so as that disease progression is more and more visible, what ends up happening is that their dependence increases. And as their dependence increases, our role in their life must increase as well. And we have to be taught the skills that we need, because caring for somebody who is living with dementia does involve clinical types of skills. It involves the ability to determine what needs there are that this person might be communicating. And remember, when dementia is progressing, the person is losing his or her ability to communicate verbally the way that he or she was used to communicating verbally. And
Yes.
so we have to be more like detectives, and we have to figure out how to undertake some of these responsibilities, and that requires an attention to things such as what we call staging in dementias, which
Okay.
is at what point of the disease progression is this person likely. And
Okay.
again, that stage is going to
Mhm.
depend on the type of dementia, because somebody who's at the early or middle stage for Alzheimer's disease might look different than somebody who is at the middle stage with Parkinsonian dementia,
Okay.
somebody who's at the middle stage with vascular dementia. And so the skills that we need are going to vary. They're going to depend upon those things. And we'll need
Okay.
training for that.
Okay. Okay. Now I see we have a comment from Marlene from Woodbourne St. Thomas. For me, who is doing the geriatric nursing, it's very hard. My mom, who is developing dementia, she's very stubborn to my sister. But
Mm,
when I call, she is a different person.
mm,
But love is the key.
mm. Yeah, so sometimes what we find is that the person, as their dementia progresses, there might be specific circumstances, and it could be physical, contextual things that could be very triggering for that person. And if we're not attentive to that context, sometimes it might even seem like it's a personal attack.
Okay.
So it's really important that we start to do that detective work to figure out what that person's needs are. The differences that we might detect with how somebody is responding to person A versus how they seem to respond to person B might be a difference that's related to things as seemingly simple as timing of the day,
Okay.
the modality of the communication. So are you reaching out by telephone? Are you reaching out by video call? Are you actually seeing the person in person? And it might also vary depending upon the relationship that you had with that individual over time.
Okay.
Because sometimes what ends up happening with somebody who's in a dementia progression is that there might be relational dynamics that might have built up over time that get really kind of expressed and exaggerated during this period. So the person might also be triggered by some other
Right.
reason, and that behavior that we might see as challenging behavior could be because of things that are very concrete. So for example, is the person feeling cold? Is the person feeling hot? Is the
Right.
person hungry? Is the person thirsty? Um, it could be that they feel very overwhelmed and they feel confused, and you're trying to talk to them while the TV is on, the radio is
Right.
on, and they're hearing a dog barking in the street. And all of that becomes really too much for them to manage
Understand.
at that particular point in time. Yeah, their brain, remember, is not able to process information and
Right.
stimuli in the way that it was processing it before. And so you think you're just having a regular chat and conversation with this person, but then they seem overwhelmed, and they seem like they're pulling back from you, and
Right.
they seem agitated, and you're not sure where that is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if somebody's calling on the phone and is
Right.
speaking to them specifically, maybe their attention is just focused on that one thing that they're doing at that point in
Okay.
time. So
Okay.
it's a number of different possibilities that could be going on.
Right. Okay. Now, since there are special skills, how are they acquired or where?
Yeah, so these special skills are acquired through training, and it's acquired through, again, a keen perception and keen powers of observation as well. So you have to really make sure that you're paying attention to the person that you're caring for, but in a different way.
Okay.
So before, you might have just heard the person in a room moving about. You might not really be really paying close attention to what they're doing, what time of the day they're doing it, etc. Now, what you have to be doing is really thinking through, depending upon the stage that the person is at, what types of assistance do they need from me?
Okay.
And depending upon the stage that they're at, they might need assistance with something as simple as dressing, putting on their clothes, or they might need assistance with selecting what they're going to wear for the day, or they might need help with being nudged to remember, okay, now is the time of the day that you normally go and you change your clothes.
Okay.
So the type of help that the person will provide is in a world in which this is really useful to the person who's living with dementia, is very responsive and attuned to that individual and to that individual's progression. And understanding progression is one of the key things that training for caregivers is meant to do, because it's meant to help you as a caregiver step back and instead of reacting sometimes, which is a very understandable and natural thing to do, because this person might be really seeming to irritate you and frustrate you, and nothing you do is good enough, and so you're just in this cycle of reacting. What training can do is it can help you step back and say, I'm realizing, that as hard as it is, this person is not even realizing what they're doing, or they're not able to regulate. This is one of the key things that as we develop into mature adults, we learn how to do. We learn how to regulate our emotions. We learn how to, if we're feeling angry, we don't just go into a meeting and blow up and speak, bad words to everybody. We have to figure out how to regulate. But as a person is progressing in terms of their dementia, especially specific types of dementia that affect different parts of the brain, they're not able to do that as well. So, but training and awareness can help you pick up on some of the cues and pay attention and start to put together some clues from this person's past and this person's medical history, etc. Not that you become a medical doctor, but just that you become a more attuned person in this person's network.
Okay. Well, we actually are a little over time. We want to go quickly to take another break, but just want to remind our listeners that this is Family Time on Love 101. We are talking about dementia and the caregiver, and we have with us Dr. Ishtar Govayo talking with us about the responsibilities of the caregiver, the skills needed, some tips on how to interact well with the person who you are caring for. Stay tuned. We know that you will learn a lot more.
Simplified CDD, or simplified customer due diligence requirements, make it easier for customers that are assessed as being low risk for money laundering to open accounts, as fewer documents are required for customer identification and verification. This financial literacy tip was brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, building an inclusive economy.
I've got love in my heart and
Get ready for another inspiring show this Testimony Tuesday inside Alive, 1 to 5, February 7, packed with inspirational stories and Alan flavored music. 1:45, we bring you the brain-jesting Menticize. Stick around for Pearl Blast at 2 o'clock as we ring in the pearl bells of heaven. 2:15 Inside the Evidence. Evangelist Roderick Robinson will join us for part 2 to share his testimony of salvation from behind bars. Then at 3 p.m., we go behind the pulpit with board chairman, Justice of the Peace, marriage officer, vice chairman at the St. Thomas Ministers Fraternal, and founding pastor of the Church of the Firstborn of Jamaica, Portmore Fellowship, Reverend Horace Bennett. All the tomorrow come alive, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., February 7, with me, Sarah, and the chirpy one on the family station, Love 101.
Okay, where are the campus eyes? suffering of Christ. You be so
Don't miss Campus Connection as our youth join in prayer in praying times on Tuesday, February 7, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. on Love 101. We're inviting all youth and youth serving organizations to stand with us as we intercede and pray for salvation and the transformation of our nation's youth and more. We will have persons equipped to break down principles of effective prayer. Also, you don't want to miss I Chose Christ, You Should Too, and lots more right here on Campus Connection, 5:30 p.m. on February 7, 2023 on Love 101, the family station.
It's all about the gospel. So tell me back one bam campus. Youths are going on bam campus.
Welcome back, everyone. It is 6:05 p.m. and you are listening to Family Time on Love 101. Family Time is produced by Family Life Ministries. For our social media interaction today, we want you to tell us what is your biggest challenge as the caregiver of someone with dementia. Let us know via WhatsApp, text, and voice notes not longer than 30 seconds at the number 876-997-3125 or on the Love 101 Facebook page and the Love 101 YouTube channel. You can also call the studio lines at 876-968-8327 to 8 to participate. Now we are with Dr. Ishtar Govaya, and we're talking about dementia and the caregiver. Excuse me. So, Dr. Govaya, you spoke about the skills that are necessary, but is there an institution that we can go to, or are there classes somewhere that's available that can help someone to learn the skills necessary to care for someone with dementia?
Sure, and thanks for asking. We actually have a caregiver training program that we are about to start, and this is called the Savvy Caregiver Program. We want to encourage anybody who's interested in getting this additional training to reach out to us, contact us at 428-2474 or 453-9133. So that's 428-2474 or 453-9133. You can also email us at stridejamaica@gmail.com. That's STRIDE Jamaica@gmail.com. So this is one set of offerings that exists in the Jamaican context. There are a number of other initiatives that are going on. So if you're not necessarily interested in skills training as a caregiver, but you want a support group, there is an online support group that a colleague, Deborah Callender, has started for caregivers of persons who are living with dementia. And you can reach out to her WhatsApp, and that's 876-829-8200. That's an online support group that she has. Alzheimer's Jamaica also exists in the local space in Jamaica, and they do public education and awareness activities. And our team, which is based at the Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network, as well as at the University of the West Indies, our team, which is doing this Savvy Caregiver training again, is really eager to help as many caregivers as possible and to think with caregivers about some of these other skills. And we're happy to think with you about what types of trainings and programs and resources would be useful for you.
So that's the Savvy Caregiver and the online support group and Alzheimer's Jamaica. So there are a few resources available. And these are available to persons outside of Kingston as well?
Yes. So the Savvy Caregiver training program is going to be delivered virtually. Okay. And if you're interested in that and you want to be part of it, just get in touch with us. We'll have several cohorts. So even if you're not able to make it into the first cohort of persons who are being trained, but you are willing to dedicate 16 to 20 hours over a 6 to 8 week period, please get in touch with us for that. The online support group, I believe, because it's virtual, it's anybody in Jamaica
Right.
who's interested in that as well. And then Alzheimer's Jamaica's offerings, I believe, are also nationwide, island-wide. And I would say as well, there are other parts of the University of West Indies, such as Mona Aging and Wellness Center, and they
Right.
have training programs and initiatives as well for health and allied care practitioners. So our group, which is also doing training of health and allied care practitioners, we as well at the Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network and at the Caribbean Institute for Health Research, we're island-wide in our remit, and we are also across the Caribbean region. And our as I mentioned, we are part of a number of other initiatives because there's Deborah Calendar's online support group, there's Alzheimer's Jamaica, there's Mona Aging and Wellness Center. Then there's our team, the Stride Jamaica team, which is at Care UE and with Jamhan, and we're doing a number of initiatives. So there are resources out there. There are resources out there, and I just want to really encourage folks to think about what you really want to be, what type of help you need, and if you want to reach out to us, we can help you think through what might be best fit for your purpose.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. We actually have a listener who is in Canada. She says her mom hallucinates a lot. She speaks to people only she can see. Is
Yeah.
this typical, and how do we deal with it?
So hallucinations and delusions are a characteristic part of Lewy body's dementia. And sometimes, in some cases, as Parkinson with dementia progresses, you might see some indications of Lewy body's dementia as well. Now, what do we do in these scenarios? The main thing that you're to ask yourself, that each of us is to ask ourselves in these scenarios is the person at risk of being a danger to him or herself because of the hallucinations? Is the person at danger of being a risk to somebody else because of the hallucinations? If there is no sense of danger, and it's a friendly type of hallucination, they're seeing a little girl, they're seeing flowers on the wall, they're seeing some odd shapes, etc. Those types of hallucinations, it's really important for us to just, in a sense, play along with them. So it's important not to argue with the person. No, I'm not seeing anything there. You're imagining things, because that will just agitate the person even more, right? And it will make the person feel like you're saying that they're crazy, etc.
Right. So if it's causing no harm, just ignore it.
Just leave it be. Leave it be. Don't argue. If you do see that the person is frightened by the hallucinations, it's really important to just try to help the person feel safe and to communicate verbally in words and with touch, if the person will allow you to touch him or her, and it's a safe touch, to help kind of gently guide the person back to being present in the physical moment.
Okay.
It's really important to not scold the person, to not finger wagging at the person. It's a useful tactic and strategy to try to distract the person if possible. And you can distract the person by talking about a task or an object that's around, that's again tactile and physical, that they can respond to. It's also really important to try to respond to the feelings that might be underlying the expression of the hallucination or the delusion. So if a person says, I'm seeing somebody in the corner there, clearly they might be feeling scared if they have that type of visceral reaction. So it's important to acknowledge what the feeling is. Say, it looks like you're feeling scared right now. Is there anything I can do to help? And if it might be that the person might just want to move from that room into a different state. If the person just feels, like it's a delight and a funny thing to see these two kids playing on the floor there, then
Okay.
you kind of respond to that, like, oh, you look like you're having a good time, or that's bringing you a lot of joy,
Mm-hmm.
etc. In terms of hallucinations that are about spatial things, it's important as well to ensure that, for example, you use lights, that the space is well lit, so that the
Okay.
person doesn't have a sense of darkness and dread, and that they
Mm-hmm.
can actually see what's going on
And the
around.
dimension of things around them.
Exactly, to the best
Okay.
extent that they can, because remember, some of the changes that are happening in the brain might
Mm-hmm.
make them not be able to ascertain those dimensions as
Mm.
you or
Okay.
I might experience those
Right.
dimensions, but or even how they might have experienced them before. So
Okay.
again, it's important to validate, and then to just try to respond and to not
Mm-hmm.
scold.
Right. Now, in terms of the learning the skills, does somebody need to have a medical background and need to have some medical knowledge?
So some of the skills of a caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
what the skills that we're training people with in this Savvy Caregiver program. And again, I see persons are asking for the number again.
Yeah.
It's 428-2474. That's 428-2474.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could contact us at stridejamaica@gmail.com. So some of these skills, people who have been caregivers for a while, you might realize that these are some things that you're doing. You're making decisions, you're assisting with planning, you are being responsible for finances, you are exercising patience, you're figuring out how to match a task and an activity with a particular stage. You might not be calling it by these names, you might
Right.
not be labeling it, but these are actually skills that you're exercising. You don't need to
Mm-hmm.
have a medical degree to do these things,
Okay.
but it's really important that you are aware of what the skills are, and this is
Mm-hmm.
what a training program can give you. And
Right.
some persons might just really just want a space to share and to vent about what it is they're experiencing, and that's different, right? That's different
Mm-hmm.
from saying that there are skills that I want to learn so that I can take care of myself, which is a big thing for caregivers, because they have to figure out how to take care of themselves, because otherwise
Right.
they get burnt out, and then
Mm-hmm.
they become even more at risk of cognitive impairment themselves because of these
Oh.
types of stresses and strains.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that skill development is something that does not require a medical degree, but it does require some time and attention to really understand what's happening here and how can I apply these skills.
Okay. Okay. There's another number that you're giving out for the online support group. It's
Sure.
Deborah Calendar's online support
Yes,
group.
Deborah Calendar's online support group, and that is 829 eight
Yes.
two zero zero. And
Eight
Deborah
two nine
Calendar is
eight
a
two zero zero.
physiotherapist. Yes,
Okay.
829-8200.
Okay. Okay. Great. And I can repeat them at the end of the
Sure.
program. All right. So as we are moving very quickly, how
Yes.
do we deal with the challenges? So there are a lot of challenges that come. It's associated with the type of dementia that the person may have and the specific risk associated. How does the caregiver deal with the challenges?
Well, I think one of the best things that the caregiver can do,
Mm-hmm.
there are two key things that I think. One is just try to put yourself in the shoes of this person who's experiencing these cognitive changes. If you pause for just a moment and you do that, and you imagine what your life would be like if
Yeah.
your cognitive functioning, if the world that you knew it was changing around you, and you're seeing and you're sensing that the world is changing around you, you know yourself to be a particular way. The way that you imagine other people interact with you is because of how you have been all this time.
Right.
You can just imagine that's a very scary thing to be experiencing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
particularly if you have some level of awareness, it's really something that can trigger a huge amount of anxiety and a huge amount of depression.
Yes.
And if you do that as a caregiver, if that's one of the first things that you do, is put yourself in that person's shoes, what ends up happening is that you have a lot more compassion.
Yeah.
You have some more compassion. Now, it doesn't mean that having compassion means that you become a saint, because it's very, very difficult to deal with some
Yes.
of the
Good
challenges
days
that you
and
might
bad
face.
days.
Yes, and it's no joke that repetitive questioning, repetitive behaviors, agitated behaviors, self-defensive behaviors, those things can be very wearying for a
Yes.
caregiver, right?
Yes.
And the phases of particular types of dementia manifestation that include um, a real dysregulation of the sleep cycle. So the person is just awake and moving around the house and doing things at odd hours of the morning, and you have to be following the person and monitoring and supervising, because you don't want them to turn on the stove, you don't want them to do things that might put them or other people in the household at risk. It's really important that
Right.
you start to pay attention to those things, right? The other thing that I would say that's really important to do is to acknowledge that you need help and to try to
Right.
figure out where to get that help, because you're not in this alone. Might feel like this, but that's why these resources, the training
Right.
programs, the education, awareness, the support groups, all of these things are really crucial to really build out, to really start to talk in your
Right.
churches, talk with your community members about what's going on, and try to destigmatize this, because there's a lot of stigma where this is concerned right now.
Right.
And if we just acknowledge that this is a reality that a lot of people in our society are living with, it might help us to have different ways of helping one another.
Okay. Okay. We have a few comments from YouTube, so we're going to take those. Good afternoon. What I realized with my mom, she's not remembering where she put things and she keep on repeating herself. How can I help her?
Yeah, so when somebody's not remembering where they put things, what's sometimes really useful to do is to make sure that you have things in the same place all the time. Now, this might not be easy to do, because what ends up happening is that the person might move things, right? And so when they move things, they might then accuse other people of misplacing them or stealing them, etc. And it's important to keep in mind that this is par for the course. And so it's important for you to try not to take these things personally when there are the accusations that come that you've
Right.
stolen this, you've changed this other person has taken this. It's also important to try to learn where this person typically puts things. Where are the
Right.
common places that things get
So they may be
stored?
hiding things.
They're hiding, yes, they're hiding
Yes.
places. What might also be useful as well is to keep track, either with a diary or a notebook, of when specific challenging behaviors occur. So if you're keeping track of things and you note that, for example, around 5 o'clock in the day, the person tends to just start repeating him or herself a lot, that
Okay.
might be a clue to you that something is happening for this person. There's an unmet need, what we call an unmet need. It could be that they feel dirty. They might want to get, wash and shower. They might feel
Okay.
hungry. They might be tired. It might be the time of
Okay.
the day that something called sundowning tends to happen, where because of the changes in the atmosphere, the lighting, person might get even more disoriented. So it's important to keep track of things, and you will really start to get a sense of patterns here. And then that might help you again to respond and not react.
Yes. So that reminds me of the phrase "once a man, twice a child."
Mm,
That I mean, even when you spoke about the person getting a little bit agitated at a certain time, like that's the same thing
mhm,
that you would go through with a
mhm.
baby, and recognizing, oh, there's a need, there's an unmet need, that if
Exactly.
I deal with this, the baby will be okay.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that in our society sometimes where we are still doing socialization around parenting and
Right.
how to really encourage parenting with positive discipline, even that's something that's sometimes not as easy a parallel to make for
Oh.
persons,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yes.
sometimes people might hear a baby crying and just think that the baby's being irritating instead of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
well, actually, the baby might be hungry. The baby
And the
might be
baby
tired. The baby
manipulate
might be
me.
confused. Yes. So,
Yes. So I just want to make a note to our listeners that Dr. Govaya will be back in a few weeks to speak about the detection of dementia. So if you have questions related to that, you can definitely listen out and tune in at that time. All right. So Dr. Govaya, do you have any encouraging words for the caregivers?
yes, I do. There are resources available, there is help available, and it's really, really important to take care of yourself. And that's what some of these trainings can do. This is what all of these interventions are really focused on, because once you take care of yourself, then you can really then be your best self for others around you. And that may seem like something that is really impossible to do, but I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you it is not. So take care of yourself, prioritize yourself, prioritize your health and your well being.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for being with us and for sharing this wealth of knowledge with
And thanks
our
so much for
listeners.
having me. And thanks so much for really bringing space and creating space for these conversations.
Yes.
I just want to thank you. I want to thank Kathy. I really want to thank Love 101 because you all have been real champions for
Yes.
this topic and this particular work. So thank you once again.
Yes. And I'm just going to remind our listeners of the numbers for Stride Jamaica, the training on the Savvy Caregiver. You can call 428 2474. That's 428 2474. And that's Stride Jamaica, and they're the ones putting on the Savvy Caregiver training. You can also join Deborah Calendar's online support group, and her WhatsApp number is 829 8200. That's 829 8200. And of course, you can reach out to Mona Aged and Wellness Center to hear about what support they have in place or what um, guidance they can give you about training. And you can reach out to to Alzheimer's Jamaica as well. I want to thank you for tuning in to Family Time this week. And if you have questions about this matter or of a personal nature about another issue, you're concerned about a family member or a friend, call us at Family Life Ministries. For our center in Portmore at 117 Cecile Avenue, call 876-939-7917. And for more information on our services or for our councils in Kingston and other parts of the island, contact our head office at 876-920-1034 or 876-926-8101. Note that appointments can only be made by calling the offices. Otherwise, to keep up to date with what's happening with FLM and our programs, find us on Facebook at Family Life Ministries FLM and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Family Life Ministries FLMJA. Before we leave you, here is this evening's Bible verse. And this sounds like it's coming from the message, Romans 8, verse 28. God promises to make something good out of the storms that bring devastation to your life. Join us again next week at 5:30 on the Love 101 Facebook and YouTube Live. You can also join us on the YouTube channel for another informative program. Thanks again to our special guest, Dr. Ishtar Govile. Thanks also to our show's producer, Kathy Gale, Open Door Communications, studio facilitator, Timoy Butler, and of course, you. Stay well, stay safe, stay blessed. I'm Tamaya Wilson. Enjoy.